The universe operates on principles we understand: physics, chemistry, the fundamental laws of cause and effect. But what happens when something defies every sensor, every theory, every rational explanation? When the impossible doesn't just exist, but arrives covered in the blood of things that shouldn't exist either? New York City had seen its share of the impossible. Alien invasions. Gods walking among mortals. Men in metal suits fighting alongside super soldiers. But nothing had prepared it for what came through the rift that tore open above Hell's Kitchen at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday night. The dimensional breach manifested first as a scream. Not a sound, exactly, but a psychic wail that sent every person within a 5-mile radius stumbling to their knees, clutching their heads as their hindbrain registered something primal: predator. Then came the heat, a blast of superheated air that shattered windows and set off every car alarm simultaneously. The sky itself seemed to peel back, reality cracking like broken glass, and through that wound in space-time poured creatures that looked like they'd crawled out of humanity's oldest nightmares. Demons. Not metaphorical ones. Not aliens that looked demonic. Actual, honest-to-God demons, twisted masses of flesh and horn and burning malice, shrieking as they materialized in the streets. Imps with crackling fireballs clutched in clawed hands. Hulking hell knights whose roars shook building foundations. And behind them, shambling corpses of the possessed, humans corrupted and puppeteered by infernal energy. S.H.I.E.L.D's response was immediate. Quinjet screamed overhead within minutes, deploying tactical teams equipped with experimental energy weapons. Director Nick Fury stood in a helicarrier command center, watching feeds from 24 cameras as his people engaged hostiles that couldn't, exist. "Get me strange," Fury snapped. "And someone tell me what the hell just ripped a hole in reality over Manhattan." "Sir, energy readings are off the charts," Agent Hill reported, her voice tight. "It's not matching any known signature. Not Tesseract, not Asgardian, not Chitauri." "Then tell me what it is, Hill." On the ground, S.H.I.E.L.D. operatives learned quickly that conventional weapons were nearly useless. Bullets that could drop a bear barely slowed the demons. Energy weapons worked better, but each creature took sustained fire to bring down, and there were dozens of them, spreading through the streets like a plague. Then someone noticed something impossible. The demons were running. Not attacking. Not spreading out to cause maximum chaos. Running. Fleeing toward the edges of the incursion zone with something that looked disturbingly like panic. "What are they running from?" one agent whispered. The answer came through the rift 30 seconds later. He didn't emerge so much as he was ejected, a figure in green armor hurled through the dimensional tear, an enormous demon's severed head clutched in one gauntlet fist. He hit the asphalt hard enough to crack it, landed in a 3-point stance, and before the echoes of impact had faded, he was moving. The Predator suit was a marvel of engineering that shouldn't exist, sleek green and bronze armor that seemed to drink in light, energy shields flickering across its surface. But it was what he did that froze every S.H.I.E.L.D. operative in place. An imp shrieked and hurled a fireball. The armored figure sidestepped with impossible speed, raised what looked like a shotgun the size of a small car, and fired. The imp didn't just die, it ceased to exist, reduced to gore and ash in an instant. The figure pumped the weapon, chambered another shell, and was already moving toward the next target before the first had finished disintegrating. A Hell Knight charged him, all muscle and fury and hell-forged rage. The figure holstered his shotgun mid-stride, drew what looked like a glowing blade that hummed with barely contained energy, and met the. That revealed nothing. No expression. No humanity. Just relentless, burning purpose. 3 blocks away, Tony Stark's suit sensors picked up the energy signatures and diverted his flight path. "Jarvis, what am I looking at?" "Unknown, sir. Energy readings suggest a combination of technology and something else. Mystical signatures present but not matching any known magical disciplines." "Great," Tony muttered, accelerating toward Hell's Kitchen. Because my Tuesday needed more mysterious armored vigilantes. The dimensional rift pulsed, crackling with unstable energy. More demons tried to pour through, but the armored figure turned his attention skyward. From his back, he drew a weapon that made S.H.I.E.L.'s experimental energy guns look like toys, a massive cannon that hummed with barely contained power. He aimed at the largest demon attempting to force its way through the breach and fired. The BFG 9000's blast lit up the night like a green star. The demon didn't just die, it was unmade, its essence scattered across dimensional barriers. The rift flickered, destabilized by the weapon's energy, and for a moment, it looked like it might collapse. Then it stabilized. And on the other side, visible for just a heartbeat, was something worse than the demons, an endless landscape of fire and death, and in the distance, something massive and ancient turning its attention toward the breach. Toward Earth. The armored figure lowered his weapon, stared at the rift, and for the first time since his arrival, paused. His helmet tilted slightly, and though no one could see his face, every person watching the feeds got the distinct impression they were witnessing a decision being made. Then he reloaded, turned back to the remaining demons, and resumed the slaughter. Nick Fury watched the feeds in silence for a long moment. Finally, he turned to Hill. "Get me everyone. Charge." The crucible blade ignited, pure golden white energy forming an edge that cut through demonic flesh like it was smoke. The Hell Knight's roar became a gurgle, then silence. "What the hell is that?" Agent Hill breathed, watching the tactical feeds. Fury's single eye narrowed. "That, Agent Hill, is either our salvation or our next biggest problem." The armored figure moved through the demon horde like a force of nature. No hesitation. No fear. No mercy. Each motion was economical, practiced, the violence of someone who perfected killing into an art form. A chainsaw roared to life, biting through demon flesh with mechanical efficiency. The super shotgun barked again and again, each shot a death sentence. When demons tried to swarm him, he switched to a plasma rifle that painted the night with blue-white fire. But it was more than just the weapons. It was the method. The absolute, unflinching determination. When a demon fell wounded, he didn't leave it to suffer, he finished it. When a possessed human stumbled toward him, its corrupted form shambling with inhuman jerking motions, he didn't hesitate. The blade fell. The corruption ended. S.H.I.E.L.'s feed picked up something else, survivors. Civilians who'd been trapped in the initial incursion, huddled in destroyed storefronts and beneath overturned cars. The armored figure cleared each block with methodical precision, and in his wake, the survivors ran. He didn't stop to comfort them. Didn't speak. Didn't even acknowledge them. He just ensured they could escape. Then he killed the next demon. "Get teams to start evacuating those civilians," Fury ordered. "And someone get me a comm line to this guy. I want to know who he is, what he wants, and whose side he's on." A Hell Knight's corpse hit a taxi hard enough to flip it. The armored figure stood atop the wreckage, scanning for the next target. His helmet turned, and for just a moment, the S.H.I.E.L.D. cameras got a clear view of his visor, a green-tinted faceplate. "Avengers, whatever's left of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s mystical consultants, and tell Stark to get there 5 minutes ago." "Sir, what do we do if he's hostile?" Fury looked at the screen, where the armored figure was tearing through demons with mechanical efficiency, leaving nothing but corpses and ash in his wake. "Agent Hill, I don't think 'hostile' is the right word. But I'll tell you what worries me," he gestured at the feeds. "That man just killed 47 demons in 6 minutes, and he hasn't even slowed down. Now ask yourself, what happens when he runs out of demons and starts looking for whatever let them in?" The figure ripped a demon's horn off and drove it through another demon's skull. Dropped the corpse. Moved to the next target. No words. No hesitation. No stopping. Just the work. If you want to see more characters enter unexpected universes and face impossible odds, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character you'd want to see unleashed in the comments below. Now let's see what happens when an unstoppable force meets Earth's mightiest heroes. Tony Stark's Mark 45 armor touched down on West 39th Street with repulsors flaring, casting red-gold light across a scene that looked less like New York and more like a war zone. Overturned vehicles. Scorch marks on asphalt. Buildings with walls torn open. And bodies, lots of bodies, but none of them human. Jarvis, analysis. Scanning, sir. Biological samples suggest extradimensional origin. Sulfuric compounds, trace elements not found in terrestrial. Yeah, I got it. Demons. Actual demons. Tony's faceplate tracked movement 3 blocks north. What about our mystery guest? Energy signature moving northwest at sustained combat speed. 43 confirmed hostiles eliminated in the last 8 minutes. 0 civilian casualties in cleared zones. 43. Tony accelerated, boosting over a collapsed newsstand. Who is this guy? He got his answer when he rounded the corner of 41st and 9th. The armored figure was in the middle of what could only be described as an execution. A demon, easily 12 feet tall, wreathed in flame, swung a massive clawed hand that should have crushed concrete. The figure ducked under the blow with almost casual precision, raised that hand cannon shotgun, and fired point-blank into the creature's chest. The demon's torso simply disintegrated, the superheated slug carrying enough force to punch through and embed itself in the brick wall behind. The figure didn't watch it fall. He was already turning, targeting the next demon with mechanical efficiency. Hey! Tony's external speakers boomed across the street. Tall, green, and heavily armed. How about we talk before you redecorate the entire neighborhood? The figure paused. His helmet turned toward Iron Man, visor glowing faintly in the darkness. For 3 seconds, they stood in the rubble-strewn street, sizing each other up. Then the figure turned away and resumed walking toward a cluster of imps setting fire to a bodega. Okay, rude. Tony landed in front of him. Repulsors charging. S.H.I.E.L.D. called this in. Dimensional breach, demon invasion, and one very enthusiastic exterminator. So here's how this works: you stop, we talk, we figure out what's happening, and maybe we avoid. The figure walked around him. Not through. Not past. Around, like Tony was a piece of furniture in his way. Are you seriously ignoring me right now? Tony pivoted, keeping pace. Because that's a new experience, and I'm not loving it. The imps shrieked and hurled fireballs. The figure raised his plasma rifle, a weapon that looked like it belonged in a sci-fi movie, all glowing chambers and crackling energy, and painted the street blue-white. 3 precise bursts. 3 dead demons. He reloaded without breaking stride. Tony's sensors pinged. Sir, S.H.I.E.L.D. Quinjet approaching from the northeast. Captain Rogers is aboard with Agents Romanoff and Barton. Great. Maybe Cap can get through to him with that man-out-of-time bonding thing. The Quinjet touched down with VTOL engines screaming, its rear ramp already lowering. Captain America hit the ground first, shield on his arm, taking in the carnage with the practiced eye of a soldier who'd seen too many battlefields. Natasha Romanoff and Clint Barton flanked him, weapons drawn but not aimed, yet. Steve's eyes found the armored figure immediately. Tony, status? Chatty guy. Real conversationalist. We're really bonding. Steve approached slowly, hands visible, shield lowered. Sir, I'm Captain Steve Rogers with. The figure walked past him too. Steve blinked. Did he just? Yep, Tony confirmed. Welcome to my world. He's very focused on his work. His work being killing demons, Natasha observed, watching the figure tear through another group of possessed humans with his chainsaw. The sound was horrific, meat and bone and mechanical grinding. She didn't flinch, but her grip on her pistol tightened. Efficiently. This is mercy. Clint lowered his bow slightly. He's done this before. A lot. Doesn't mean he gets to make execution calls in our city, Steve said, but his voice had lost some of its certainty. Tony's HUD was going crazy with readings from the figure's equipment. Jarvis, what am I looking at? Unknown technology, sir. Energy signatures suggest a fusion of conventional ballistics, directed energy weapons, and something my sensors classify as anomalous. The blade appears to disrupt matter at a quantum level. The armor is self-repairing and powered by an energy source I cannot identify. Translation. This individual's technology is centuries beyond current Earth capabilities. Possibly millennia. On S.H.I.E.L.D.'s command frequency, Fury's voice cut through the chatter. Rogers, Stark, status. Steve activated his comm, we've made contact. He's non-communicative but focused on eliminating the demonic incursion. Extremely hostile to anything that comes through the rift. Can you contain him? Steve and Tony exchanged glances. Director, Tony said carefully, I don't think contain is the right approach here. This guy's killed 50+ demons without breaking a sweat. His tech makes my suit look like a toaster. And unless I'm reading this wrong, he doesn't view us as allies, we're just not on his kill list. Yet, Natasha added quietly. The figure had resumed his patrol, moving systematically through the incursion zone. They watched him corner a group of imps in an alley and eliminate them with ruthless efficiency, no wasted movement, no hesitation, no mercy. He's a weapon, Clint observed. A really, really good weapon pointed at the right targets. For now, Steve said. But what happens when the demons are gone? As if in answer, the rift pulsed, crackling with renewed energy. Something was coming through. Something bigger. The figure noticed immediately, his posture shifting, weapons readying. He began running toward the breach point with mechanical. As if summoned by the words, a possessed civilian stumbled out of a destroyed Korean restaurant, a middle-aged man in a business suit, his eyes burning with sulfurous light, his movements jerking and unnatural. The demonic energy had twisted his features into something almost unrecognizable, his jaw distended, fingers elongated into claws. The figure raised his shotgun. Wait. Steve threw his shield. It hit the shotgun's barrel a millisecond before the figure fired, deflecting the shot into the pavement. Asphalt exploded. The possessed man shrieked and lunged. The figure moved with liquid speed, dropped the shotgun, drew a pistol from his hip, and fired 3 rounds into the possessed man's center mass. The man dropped. Steve caught his shield on the rebound, his expression hardening. That was a human being. The figure holstered his pistol and picked up his shotgun. Hey! Steve stepped into his path. I'm talking to you. That man might have been saved. We don't know what this corruption is, maybe it's reversible. Maybe. The figure pointed at the corpse. Then he raised his hand and made a crushing gesture, like crumpling paper. Already gone. You don't know that, Steve insisted. The figure's helmet tilted slightly, and though no expression was visible, everyone present felt the weight of something ancient and tired behind that visor. He reached down to the corpse, grabbed the man's arm, and lifted it. The flesh sloughed off the bone like melted wax, exposing muscle that was no longer human, corrupted, twisted, infused with something that made reality itself recoil. The corruption was spreading even in death, demonic energy trying to propagate through dead tissue. Natasha stepped back. Okay, that's not good. The figure dropped the arm, drew his crucible blade, and drove it through the corpse's heart. The demonic energy shrieked, actually shrieked, and dissipated, leaving only human remains behind. Then he looked at Steve, and the message was clear. Determination. Jarvis, what's coming through that rift? Scanning. Sir, energy readings are spiking. Whatever's approaching has a mass comparable to. The rift tore open wider, and through it stepped something that made the previous demons look like children's toys. 15 feet of armored demonic flesh, wreathed in hellfire, carrying a blade that dripped with energy that made reality shudder. A Hell Baron. It roared, a sound that shattered windows for 3 blocks. And locked eyes with the armored figure sprinting toward it. The figure didn't slow down. Is he seriously going to? Tony started. The Hell Baron swung its blade in a downward arc that would have split a tank in half. The figure slid under it, super shotgun already firing upward into the Baron's exposed underside. The demon staggered. The figure rolled to his feet, switched to the plasma rifle, and poured concentrated fire into the wound. Okay, that's actually kind of impressive, Clint admitted. The Hell Baron recovered faster than physics should allow, backhanding the figure with enough force to send him crashing through a parked car. The vehicle crumpled like aluminum foil. We need to help him. Steve started forward. The figure emerged from the wreckage, armor shields flickering but intact. He holstered his weapons, and from his back drew the BFG 9000, that massive cannon that hummed with barely contained apocalypse. Or maybe not, Tony said, his sensors screaming warnings about energy buildup. The Hell Baron charged. The figure stood his ground, aimed, and fired. The blast of green energy hit the demon center mass and detonated. Not exploded, detonated, the energy discharge turning the creature's internal biology into superheated plasma that erupted outward in a sphere of destruction. The Baron's roar became a death scream, then silence. When the light faded, only ash remained. Brutally, Clint corrected, arrow knocked but not drawn. That's not combat. That's extermination. Another demon died. Then another. The figure moved like he'd done this 1,000 times before, because, somehow, they all sensed he had. Steve tried again, jogging to keep pace. Sir, we need to understand what's happening here. That rift in the sky, did you come through it? Are there more like you? Are you? The figure stopped. Everyone tensed. Slowly, the armored head turned toward Steve. For a long moment, the green visor studied him, and Steve had the uncomfortable sensation of being assessed, measured, and categorized as either threat or non-threat. The conclusion must have been favorable, because the figure raised one gauntlet hand and pointed, not at Steve, but past him. At the rift. Then the hand moved, pointing at a demon corpse. Then back to the rift. The message was clear, demons came through. I'm sending them back. Okay, so you're here to stop the invasion, Steve said, voice steady. We can work together. Coordinate. There are civilians who need. The figure turned away and resumed walking. Steve's jaw tightened. That wasn't a suggestion. Cap, I don't think he does teamwork, Tony interjected. Also, just a heads up, he's been killing anything that comes through that rift, including things that used to be human. Natasha's eyes narrowed. The possessed? If that's what we're calling them, yeah. He's not checking for pulses. Then we have a problem, Steve said quietly. Those people might be savable. The figure lowered the weapon, checked it with practiced hands, and holstered it. Then he turned, looked directly at the assembled heroes, and raised one hand. He pointed at the rift. Then at them. Then made a gesture that could only mean, stay back. Yeah, Tony said quietly. I don't think he needs our help. The SHIELD helicarrier hovered 3 miles above Manhattan, its command center alive with activity. Holographic displays showed tactical feeds from 24 sources, satellite imagery, Quinjet cameras, ground-level SHIELD agents, and Tony's suit sensors. Every screen told the same story, one armored figure systematically clearing New York City of a demonic invasion while Earth's mightiest heroes watched from the sidelines. Nick Fury stood at the center of it all, arms crossed, his single eye tracking the green-armored warrior as he tore through another cluster of demons near Times Square. How many? 73 confirmed kills in 42 minutes, Agent Hill reported. 0 civilian casualties in cleared zones. 18 SHIELD agents injured trying to engage the same hostiles, none fatal, but the contrast is notable. He's not just good, Fury muttered. He's something else entirely. On the main screen, the figure planted his boot on a Hell Knight's skull and fired his shotgun point blank. The demon's head ceased to exist. He reloaded without looking, already moving toward the next target. Maria Hill pulled up a tactical analysis. His combat pattern suggests military training, but no known doctrine. He's aggressive where conventional tactics call for caution, methodical where we'd expect improvisation. It's like watching someone follow a playbook we don't have access to. Because he's fought this war before, Fury said quietly. Look at him. Every movement is muscle memory. He doesn't think about it, he just knows. Dr. Eric Selvig appeared on a secondary monitor, his face haggard. The astrophysicist had been pulled from his research to analyze the rift. Director Fury, I've completed my analysis of the dimensional breach. It's not Asgardian. It's not related to the Tesseract. This is something else, a tier between our reality and somewhere else. Somewhere else meaning hell. Selvig hesitated. I'm a scientist, Director. I don't use words like hell. He's looking at that rift the way a predator looks at prey. On the ground, the situation was deteriorating in a different way. The figure had cleared a 6-block radius around the rift, creating a perimeter of demon corpses that SHIELD teams were now struggling to contain. Civilians were fleeing the area in droves, but some had stopped to watch, filming on phones, posting to social media. The footage was already going viral. #Demon Slayer was trending worldwide. Steve Rogers stood at the edge of the cleared zone, watching the figure methodically patrol the perimeter. Every few minutes, another demon would attempt to push through the rift, and every time, the figure would eliminate it with brutal efficiency. He's not slowing down, Natasha observed, standing beside Steve. Most enhanced individuals tire eventually. He's been fighting for almost an hour at full intensity. Maybe he doesn't get tired, Clint suggested from his overwatch position on a nearby rooftop. Or maybe he's just that committed. Tony landed beside them, his faceplate retracting. Jarvis finished analyzing his armor. You're not going to like this. Try me, Steve said. That suit is self-repairing at the molecular level. The energy shields regenerate faster than anything short of sustained heavy weapons fire can deplete them. And get this. The suit is absorbing energy from the demons he kills. Every time he puts one down, his power cells charge a little more. He's literally fueling himself with his enemies. Natasha's expression didn't change, but her posture shifted slightly. That's efficient. That's terrifying, Tony corrected. Because it means he can do this indefinitely. No resupply, no downtime, no support. He's a self-contained war machine. Steve's gaze remained fixed on the figure. We need to establish communication. Real communication, not just pointing and gestures. Good luck with that, Tony muttered. Guy's shown all the conversational skills of a brick wall. Of Mephisto. Lord of Hell. And if his herald establishes a foothold here, the rift won't be the only problem, it'll be the doorway to Earth's damnation. The figure heard none of this. He was already running toward the rift, weapons ready, that same unstoppable determination radiating from every movement. Steve grabbed his comm, Tony, Natasha, Clint, fall back and establish a secondary perimeter. If that thing gets past him. If it gets past him. Tony interjected. Cap, I don't think you understand. He's not falling back. He's going toward it. Through the rift emerged something that made the Hell Baron look like a practice dummy. 20 feet of scaled demonic flesh, wings that blotted out the sky, eyes that burned with intelligence and malice. It carried a trident that crackled with hellfire, and when it spoke, its voice made windows shatter for half a mile. "Mortal realm," it boomed. "You have been judged. Lord Mephisto claims this world for." The figure fired the BFG 9000. The herald saw it coming, supernatural reflexes born of centuries serving Hell's master. It raised its trident, and hellfire met argent energy in a collision that lit up the night sky like a second sun. The shockwave flattened everything within 100 yards, cars, streetlights, phone poles, all reduced to scrap in an instant. When the light cleared, the herald was still standing, smoking but alive. It looked down at the armored figure with something like surprise. "Impossible. Nothing from this realm should." The figure switched to his plasma rifle and opened fire, each shot precise and unrelenting. The herald roared and lunged, moving with speed that belied its size. Its trident stabbed downward, and the figure rolled aside, the weapon punching through asphalt like paper. Steve activated his comm, "We need to help him." "Negative," Strange's voice cut through. "That herald is mystically bound to Mephisto. Physical attacks alone won't permanently destroy it. We need of Mephisto, Lord of Hell. And if his herald establishes a foothold here, the rift won't be the only problem, it'll be the doorway to Earth's damnation." The figure heard none of this. He was already running toward the rift, weapons ready, that same unstoppable determination radiating from every movement. Steve grabbed his comm, "Tony, Natasha, Clint, fall back and establish a secondary perimeter. If that thing gets past him." "If it gets past him?" Tony interjected. "Cap, I don't think you understand. He's not falling back. He's going toward it." Through the rift emerged something that made the Hell Baron look like a practice dummy. 20 feet of scaled demonic flesh, wings that blotted out the sky, eyes that burned with intelligence and malice. It carried a trident that crackled with hellfire, and when it spoke, its voice made windows shatter for half a mile. "Mortal realm," it boomed. "You have been judged. Lord Mephisto claims this world for." The figure fired the BFG 9000. The herald saw it coming, supernatural reflexes born of centuries serving Hell's master. It raised its trident, and hellfire met argent energy in a collision that lit up the night sky like a second sun. The shockwave flattened everything within 100 yards, cars, streetlights, phone poles, all reduced to scrap in an instant. When the light cleared, the herald was still standing, smoking but alive. It looked down at the armored figure with something like surprise. "Impossible. Nothing from this realm should." The figure switched to his plasma rifle and opened fire, each shot precise and unrelenting. The herald roared and lunged, moving with speed that belied its size. Its trident stabbed downward, and the figure rolled aside, the weapon punching through asphalt like paper. Steve activated his comm, "We need to help him." "Negative," Strange's voice cut through. "That herald is mystically bound to Mephisto. Physical attacks alone won't permanently destroy it. We need." "Then we make him listen." Steve started walking toward the perimeter. "Cap, I really don't think." But Steve was already moving, shield on his arm, approaching the figure with steady, measured steps. The armored warrior had his back turned, reloading his plasma rifle while scanning the rift for new threats. "I know you can hear me," Steve called out. "And I know you're here to fight the same enemy we are. But this is our world. These are our people. We need to coordinate." The figure spun, shotgun raised and aimed directly at Steve's chest. They froze, 10 feet apart. Steve didn't raise his shield. Didn't flinch. Just met that green visor with steady eyes. "I'm not your enemy. Neither are they." He gestured toward Tony, Natasha, and the SHIELD teams. "We're here to protect people. Same as you. The shotgun didn't waver. You came through that rift, Steve continued, voice calm. You've been fighting these things for a long time, I can see it in the way you move. You're tired. Not physically, maybe, but tired in a way that matters more. For the first time, the figure's aim wavered slightly. Whatever war you've been fighting, wherever you came from, you're here now. And here, we don't work alone. We work together. We trust each other. We save each other. Steve took a slow step forward. Let us help you. The figure lowered his weapon, not by much, but enough. Then the rift screamed. Not the demons. The rift itself. Reality tearing wider, energy flooding through in waves that made the air shimmer and crack. Both Steve and the figure turned toward it simultaneously, instincts overriding their standoff. Something was coming through. Something massive. Doctor Strange's voice crackled over S.H.I.E.L.D's emergency frequency, reaching every hero on the ground. Get everyone back. Now. What's coming through isn't just another demon, it's a herald. An agent of something much worse. Herald of what? Fury demanded from the helicarrier. Lightly. But the energy readings, the thermodynamic impossibilities, the way reality itself seems to recoil from that opening? If hell exists as a physical dimension rather than a metaphysical concept, yes. That's what we're looking at. Fury's jaw tightened. How do we close it? That's the problem. The rift is stabilizing. Whatever tore it open initially, it's being held open by something on the other side now. Enormous amounts of energy are being channeled through. Enough to power New York for a year, all devoted to keeping that doorway open. Why? Invasion, a new voice interjected. Everyone turned to see Dr. Stephen Strange, or at least his astral projection, materializing in the command center. The Sorcerer Supreme looked grimmer than Fury had ever seen him. That rift isn't random. Someone on the other side wants it open. And they're going to keep sending things through until either we close it or they achieve whatever they're planning. Fury gestured at the screens showing the armored figure. Any idea who our helpful exterminator is? Strange's astral form floated closer to the main display, studying the figure with an intensity that made even his projection feel heavy. His armor has mystical components, divine ones, actually. I'm sensing blessings, wards, protective enchantments woven into the technology. Whoever made that suit understood both science and sorcery at levels I've rarely encountered. So he's enhanced. Beyond enhanced. He's been changed. Fundamentally altered on a metaphysical level. Strange paused. Director, that man has killed gods. The command center went silent. Say again. Fury said carefully. I'm reading his aura, his spiritual resonance. This isn't a soldier. This isn't even a hero. This is something that was made, or perhaps remade, into a weapon designed specifically to kill divine beings. Demons, gods, anything that exists on a plane beyond mortal understanding. Strange's projection turned to Fury. And right now. The figure drew his crucible blade. The weapon ignited with that same golden-white energy, and for the first time, the herald seemed to recognize what it was facing. Its eyes widened, actually widened, and it took a step back. You carry the mark. The Maker's blessing. You are. The figure lunged, and the crucible blade carved through the herald's defenses like they were mist. The demon screamed. Not in pain, but in fear, genuine existential terror as the blade disrupted its connection to Mephisto, severing the mystical bindings that gave it power and form. No. Lord Mephisto. Your servant. The blade pierced its heart. The herald's scream became a death rattle, then silence. Its body crumbled to ash, and for a moment, through the rift, something ancient and terrible turned its attention toward Earth. Toward the figure. Then the rift pulsed once and contracted slightly, as if reconsidering whether this invasion was worth the cost. The figure stood in the herald's ashes, blade still ignited, staring at the rift with the patient intensity of something that knew how to wait. Steve approached slowly, shield ready but not raised. "That blade, what is it?" The figure glanced at him, then back at the rift. Waiting for the next attack. The next demon. The next fight. Because for him, there was always a next fight. Fury's voice crackled over the calm. "Rogers, Strange says that Herald was a warning shot. Mephisto's testing us. If he commits to this invasion." "I know," Steve said quietly, watching the figure resume his patrol around the rift. "Director, I don't think we can stop him from fighting. But maybe we can fight alongside him. You trust him?" Steve watched the figure check his weapons, reload, and position himself for the next wave. "I trust that he hates what's coming through that rift more than anything else in existence. And right now? That's enough." The figure raised his shotgun, aimed at the rift, and waited. Whatever came through next would face the same welcome as everything before it, absolute, uncompromising violence delivered with mechanical precision. Earth's mightiest heroes were beginning to understand that they hadn't gained an ally. They'd simply been judged non-hostile by something far more dangerous than they'd imagined. The Sorcerer Supreme looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes. "I've been analyzing the rift from the sanctum. The situation is worse than we thought." "How much worse?" Fury's voice came through the comm system. He was still on the helicarrier, coordinating with the World Security Council. "That rift is being held open by an anchor point, a physical object on Earth that's channeling energy from Hell's dimension. Until we find and destroy it, that doorway stays open. And Mephisto can send through whatever he wants, whenever he wants." "Can you locate it?" Steve asked. "I'm trying. But whoever placed it understands mystical concealment better than anyone I've encountered. It's hidden behind wards and protections that are taking time to unravel." Strange gestured toward the figure outside. "We need to keep that rift contained until I can find the anchor. Which means keeping our silent friend cooperative." "Cooperative might be a strong word," Tony muttered. "He's tolerated us so far." As if summoned by the discussion, the figure moved for the first time in hours. His helmet turned, scanning the perimeter, and locked onto something in the distance. Without warning, he started running, not toward the rift, but east, toward the Hudson River. "What's he?" Steve started. "SHIELD teams report movement." Hill interrupted, pulling up new camera feeds. "Pier 84, West Side Highway. Civilians reported demons emerging from the sewers. They're flanking us," Natasha realized. The rift was a distraction. The figure was already 3 blocks away, moving with inhuman speed. Steve grabbed his shield. "Avengers, move out. We can't let him engage alone, we need to understand their strategy." By the time they caught up, the fight was already over. The figure stood on Pier 84, surrounded by demon corpses, 8 imps, 3 Hell Knights, and something that looked like it had crawled out of humanity's prehistoric nightmares. The Hudson River lapped at the pier's edge. The demon gestured, and the rift, visible even here, in the station's vaulted ceiling, exploded open. Dozens of demons poured through, filling the station with hellspawn. Imps, Hell Knights, Pinkies, Cacodemons, everything the figure had been killing topside, now concentrated in an enclosed space with nowhere to run. Steve raised his shield. "Avengers." The figure moved. He didn't charge blindly. He moved like water, like smoke, like something that had fought in spaces like this 1,000 times before. Shotgun barked, plasma rifle hummed, chainsaw roared. Every shot was kill. Every movement economy. He carved through the demonic horde with mechanical precision, and for the first time, the Avengers saw him at full capacity in close quarters. It was beautiful and terrible in equal measure. Tony's repulsors took down 2 imps trying to flank. Okay, fighting beside him is way different than watching from a distance. Stay focused. Steve's shield ricocheted off 3 demons in sequence, clearing a path toward the cultists. Strange, how do we destroy that anchor? Working on it. The Sorcerer Supreme's hands wove complex patterns, mystical energy pushing back against the dark magic protecting the artifact. These wards are sophisticated. I need time. Time was the one thing they didn't have. The summoner laughed. A sound like breaking glass, and raised its hands. The obsidian heart pulsed faster, and the rift grew wider. Something massive was trying to push through, something that made even the herald look insignificant. The figure saw it. Changed tactics immediately. He abandoned the demon horde, sprinted toward the summoner with single-minded determination, and drew his crucible blade. The summoner smiled. Predictable. A hell baron materialized directly in the figure's path. Ambush, planned, perfectly executed. Its massive fist connected with the figure's chest and sent him flying backward into the tiled wall. The impact cratered stone. Are you with us? The figure chambered around in his shotgun. Steve took that as a yes. 20 minutes later, they stood at the entrance to the abandoned City Hall station, a beautiful relic from 1904, closed to the public for decades, its elegant arches and tile work hidden beneath modern Manhattan. SHIELD had cleared the area, but the air itself felt wrong, heavy with pressure that made ears pop and teeth ache. The anchor is definitely down there, Strange confirmed, mystical energy crackling around his hands. I'm sensing significant defensive measures. Mystical and physical. Demons? Clint asked, arrow knocked. Among other things. The figure walked past them all and descended the stairs into darkness without hesitation. Does he ever wait for a plan? Tony muttered, following. I don't think he needs plans, Steve replied. I think he just needs targets. The abandoned station was a nightmare made manifest. The beautiful tile work was covered in symbols written in blood, fresh blood, still wet. The air stank of sulfur and burning meat. And in the center of the curved platform, suspended in a web of glowing chains, hung the anchor, an artifact that looked like a massive heart carved from obsidian, pulsing with sickly light. Around it stood 13 figures in robes, cultists, hands raised in prayer or chanting. And behind them, emerging from the shadows, came demons. Not the mindless imps and hell knights from before. These were summoners. Thinking demons. Strategists. One stepped forward, its form almost humanoid but wrong in ways that hurt to perceive. When it spoke, reality itself seemed to flinch. Seraphim's chosen, it hissed, and its eyes locked onto the figure with recognition. So you followed us even here. Across dimensions. Across realities. Your crusade knows no end. The figure said nothing. Just raised his shotgun. Mephisto sends his regards. And his armies. Activated. The tent went silent. Strange's voice came through everyone's comms simultaneously. He said anchor. Ask him where it is. Steve knelt beside the man, voice gentle but urgent. The anchor, the thing keeping the rift open. Where did they make you install it? I don't know what it was. Just some kind of artifact, covered in symbols. They had me place it in the old subway station, the abandoned City Hall station. Said it needed to be at an intersection of ley lines, whatever that means. Please, you have to save my daughter. I gave them everything they wanted, they promised. Demons don't honor promises, the figure said. Everyone turned to stare at him. It was the first time he'd spoken. His voice was deep, gravelly, distorted slightly by his helmet's audio systems. Each word sounded like it cost him something to produce, like speech was a half-forgotten skill he'd abandoned years ago. The man started crying harder. No, no, they said, they promised. The figure holstered his shotgun and turned to Strange. Even without words, the communication was clear, we know where it is. Let's end this. Strange nodded slowly. City Hall Station. I should have seen it, that location is a nexus of mystical energy. Perfect for anchoring a dimensional rift. He looked at Steve. We need to move now. If Mephisto realizes we found his anchor, he'll try to stop us. Or he'll push everything he has through that rift before we can close it, Tony added. A last-ditch invasion attempt. Steve made the decision in seconds. Tony, Clint, you're with me and Strange to secure the anchor. Natasha, coordinate with S.H.I.E.L.D. to evacuate the immediate area around City Hall Station. Bruce, he paused. Where is Bruce? Quinjet, standing by, Natasha reported. He's ready if we need the other guy. Keep him in reserve. Steve turned to the figure, who was already checking his weapons, preparing for the next fight. We're going to destroy that anchor and close the rift. The sun rose over Manhattan to find the city transformed into something between a war zone and a containment site. S.H.I.E.L.D. had established a 3-mile quarantine perimeter around the dimensional rift, evacuating over 50,000 civilians while National Guard units formed a secondary cordon. News helicopters circled at maximum safe distance, broadcasting footage that was being watched by billions worldwide. At the center of it all, the figure stood motionless, weapons ready, waiting. He hadn't moved from his position in 6 hours. Hadn't rested. Hadn't even shifted his weight. Just stood there, visor fixed on the rift, a statue of armored determination. He's been like that since 3 a.m., Clint reported from his overwatch position. No sign of fatigue. No bathroom breaks. No food. Nothing. Just, waiting. Tony stood in the S.H.I.E.L.D. command tent that had been erected 2 blocks from the perimeter, studying holographic readouts of the figure's armor. Jarvis has been monitoring his vitals, or trying to. The suit's shielding is blocking most scans, but what we're getting is weird. Elevated heart rate that never varies. Respiration patterns that don't match any human baseline. And his core temperature is higher than it should be. How much higher? Natasha asked, accepting a cup of coffee from a S.H.I.E.L.D. technician. Enough that he should be cooking inside that armor. But the suit's compensating somehow, regulating everything at levels that would kill a normal person but seem to be optimal for him. Steve entered the tent, his uniform dirty from helping with evacuation efforts. Any changes? Nothing coming through the rift for the last 4 hours, Maria Hill reported, manipulating a tactical display. It's like whatever's on the other side is reconsidering its approach. Because he killed their herald, Steve said. They know what's waiting for them now. Doctor Strange materialized in the tent, physically present this time, not an astral projection. No. Steve threw his shield, but the Baron caught it mid-flight and crushed it like paper. The figure pulled himself from the crater, armor shields flickering, and for the first time since arriving in this universe, he looked genuinely hurt. The summoner began chanting in a language that predated human civilization. The rift pulsed one more time. And through it, pushing with irresistible force, came the outline of something ancient and terrible, something that even Mephisto would call master. The temperature in the station dropped 20 degrees in seconds. Frost formed on the tiles. Breath became visible. And through the rift came a presence that made every living thing in the station instinctively recoil, a primal, lizard brain recognition of something that existed to end life. It wasn't fully through yet. Just an arm, if it could be called that, a limb composed of shadows and fire and something worse than both. Where it touched reality, existence itself seemed to decay, the laws of physics breaking down. Doctor Strange's face went pale. That's not just a demon. That's a titan of hell. A being that existed before Earth, before humanity, before the concept of mercy was even imagined. "Can you stop it?" Steve shouted, pulling himself up from where the Hell Baron had knocked him. "Not while the anchor is active." Strange's hands moved faster, mystical seals appearing and dissolving as he worked to break through the protective wards. "I need 30 seconds. The figure stood, armor sparking where it had cracked against the wall. His shields were down to 40%. The Hell Baron advanced toward him, fists raised, confident in its overwhelming physical superiority. Tony's HUD was screaming warnings. "That Titan thing is pulling itself through. If it fully manifests, we'll all die," Natasha finished, putting 3 rounds into a demon's skull. Slowly. Painfully. And that's the optimistic scenario. The figure looked at the Hell Baron. Then at the summoner still chanting. Then at the Titan's arm pulling more of its mass through the rift. He was calculating, processing, making a decision that everyone watching could sense was going to be insane. He ran at the Hell Baron. Not away from it, toward it. The demon's fist came down like a hammer, but the figure slid under the blow, came up inside the Baron's guard, and drove his crucible blade up through its jaw and into its brain. The Baron staggered, not quite dead, and the figure used the embedded blade as a. But he can open dozens of smaller ones. Anywhere. Anytime. The color drained from Strange's face. "That's not, you're lying. Check for yourself, sorcerer." Horn's tone was almost sympathetic. "I'll wait." Strange's hands moved, mystical energy flowing as he extended his senses across the city. His expression grew darker with each passing second. "No. No, that's not possible. The seal should have strengthened the barriers, not," he stopped, realization hitting. It was a trap. The anchor wasn't just powering the rift. It was also suppressing random breaches. Mephisto wanted us to destroy it. "Gold star for the wizard," Horn said. "Now, let's talk about solutions. AIM has been developing containment protocols for exactly this scenario. With S.H.I.E.L.D.'s resources and our technology, we can establish a monitoring network, predict breach points, deploy response teams." "At what price?" Natasha interrupted, recognizing the setup. "Minimal, really. We just need access to any and all individuals, technology, or artifacts related to the incursion. For study. For the greater good." Horn's eyes locked onto the figure again. "Starting with your silent friend and his very interesting equipment." The figure's hand moved to his shotgun. "I wouldn't," Horn said calmly. Her tactical team raised their weapons, not conventional firearms, but something that hummed with dangerous energy. "Those are Judas rounds. Demon killer ammunition we developed from samples recovered tonight. Very effective against anything infused with hell-related energy signatures. Which, according to our scans, includes your armor's power source." Tony's HUD confirmed it. "She's not bluffing. Those weapons are putting out energy signatures that could penetrate his shields." Steve stepped between them. "You're not taking him anywhere. And you're definitely not experimenting on him. Captain Rogers, I'm not asking permission. The Enhanced Individuals Accord gives us legal authority to." "Blood." Tony's faceplate retracted. "Is everyone?" "I'm intact," Strange said, though he looked ready to collapse. "The anchor is destroyed. The rift is sealed. We won. At what cost?" Steve looked around at the destruction. 13 cultists dead. An entire city block damaged. And somewhere in Queens, a 7-year-old girl was still waiting for her father, a father who'd betrayed humanity to save her and would now have to live with that choice. "We need to secure that man from the pier," Natasha said quietly. "And find his daughter. Get them both into protective custody before." "Before what?" a new voice interjected. They turned to find a woman approaching, corporate suit, heels clicking on the pavement, flanked by 4 men in tactical gear bearing an unfamiliar insignia. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Before they become liabilities, she continued. Before someone asks uncomfortable questions about how demons suddenly appeared in New York. Before the public starts wondering if our heroes are really capable of protecting them. Who are you? Steve demanded. Samantha Horn, Advanced Idea Mechanics. We're a private research firm specializing in unusual phenomena. Her eyes found the figure, who stood motionless, watching her with that same predator's focus. And we'd very much like to discuss the individual who just destroyed an irreplaceable mystical artifact without understanding the consequences. Consequences? Strange straightened, exhausted but defiant. That anchor was tearing open a doorway to hell. Destroying it saved this city. Did it? Horn's smile widened. Or did it merely delay the inevitable? See, we've been tracking dimensional instabilities for months. That anchor wasn't creating the rift, it was controlling it. Focusing it. Keeping it contained to one location. She gestured at the sky. Now that it's destroyed, the dimensional barriers in this entire region have been weakened. Mephisto can't open one big door anymore. The remaining demons in the station began to burn from the inside out, their connection to hell severed, their physical forms unable to sustain themselves without the anchor's support. Then the feedback hit. The collapsing rift released a shockwave of energy that threw everyone to the ground. The station's century-old architecture groaned and cracked. Tiles shattered. Support pillars buckled. The ceiling began to collapse. Out! Steve yelled, grabbing a dazed Tony. Everyone out. They ran for the stairs as the station came apart around them. Clint covered their retreat, putting arrows into any demon still moving. Natasha pulled Strange to his feet, half dragging the exhausted sorcerer toward safety. And the figure. The figure wasn't running. He stood in the center of the collapsing station, visor tilted upward, watching the rift seal completely. Making sure. Verifying. Because that's what he did, he made sure the job was finished. A support beam came loose above him. 3 tons of concrete and steel, falling directly toward his position. Steve saw it happen in slow motion. Saw the figure notice. Saw him make no move to dodge. Move! Steve threw his shield, or what was left of it after the Baron had crushed it, but the twisted metal couldn't deflect that much mass. The beam fell. Tony's repulsors fired, trying to alter its trajectory. Not enough force. Not enough time. Then the figure moved, not away, but up. He fired his jump jets. Equipment they hadn't even known he had, and launched himself vertically, punching through the falling debris with pure momentum. His armored fist led the way, smashing through concrete, emerging from the collapsing ceiling onto the street above in an explosion of dust and rubble. He landed on the sidewalk, crouched, then stood slowly. Behind him, the entrance to City Hall Station collapsed completely, sealing the abandoned station forever. The Avengers emerged from a secondary exit 50 yards away, coughing, covered in dust and demon. Pivot point to swing himself up onto the demon's shoulders. What is he doing? Clint breathed. The figure planted his boots on the Baron's shoulders, gripped the crucible with both hands, and yanked. The blade ripped upward through the demon's skull, splitting its head in half. As the Baron collapsed, the figure used the falling momentum to launch himself forward, directly at the summoner. The summoner raised its hands to cast, but the figure was already firing mid-air. 3 plasma bolts, precisely aimed. The demon's concentration broke, its spell disrupted. The figure landed, rolled, came up with his super shotgun already pressed against the summoner's chest. You cannot stop. He fired. Point blank. Center mass. The summoner disintegrated, and without its guidance, the cultists' chanting faltered. The obsidian heart's pulse stuttered. Now! Strange shouted. Golden mystical energy erupted from the Sorcerer Supreme's hands, finally breaking through the weakened wards and striking the anchor directly. The obsidian heart cracked, dark energy bleeding from the fissures. The Titan roared, a sound that wasn't heard but felt, vibrating through bone and soul. Its arm thrashed, trying to complete its passage before the doorway closed. The figure looked up at it, then at his weapons. Making another calculation. He drew the BFG 9000. "Oh no," Tony said. "He's not seriously going to." The figure aimed at the anchor, not the Titan. "Wait!" Strange shouted. "If you destroy it with that much energy in an enclosed space, the feedback will." The figure fired anyway. The BFG's blast hit the cracked anchor and detonated. But instead of exploding outward, the energy was sucked inward, pulled into the anchor's collapsing dimensional matrix. The obsidian heart shattered, and the rift began to collapse, reality snapping back into place like a rubber band. The Titan's roar became a shriek of pure rage as it was pulled backward, its arm disintegrating as the dimensional pathway sealed. Signature flagged. "We'll know where he is." "Good. Because whether he wants it or not, he's going to need backup." Steve looked at his team, exhausted, battered, but alive. "Natasha, coordinate with S.H.I.E.L.D. on protecting that man's daughter. Clint, work with them to establish a perimeter monitoring system for dimensional breaches. Strange, you need rest, but after that, I need you to figure out how to strengthen the dimensional barriers." "And you?" Natasha asked. "I'm going to figure out how to work with someone who doesn't believe in teamwork." Steve started walking in the direction the figure had gone. "Because if AIM knows about him, others will too. And I'd rather have him on our side when that happens." Tony landed beside him. "Cap, you saw his face. You saw his eyes. That's not a person anymore. That's a weapon that happens to be pointed at the right targets." "For now," Steve agreed. "But everyone can be reached. Everyone has something they care about, something worth protecting beyond just killing. We just have to find what that is for him." In the distance, screams erupted. A new breach, smaller than the original rift but no less deadly. And already, a green-armored figure was sprinting toward it, weapons ready, purpose absolute. The hunt continued. 3 days later, New York City existed in a state of controlled chaos. 17 smaller dimensional breaches had opened across Manhattan, Brooklyn, and Queens. None lasted more than 20 minutes. None produced more than a dozen demons. And none resulted in civilian casualties. The reason was simple, the figure was hunting them. S.H.I.E.L.D. had set up a command center in Stark Tower, coordinating with local authorities, monitoring dimensional energy spikes, and trying, mostly failing, to keep up with the green-armored warrior who seemed to materialize at breach sites before their own teams could even deploy. "Contact in Hell's Kitchen, West 47th, Agent Hill reported, marking another location on the holographic map. Small rift, estimated 3 to 5 hostiles." "Is he already there?" Fury asked, though he knew the answer. "Arrived 90 seconds ago. Energy signatures indicate combat in progress." On the monitors, S.H.I.E.L.D. drone footage showed the figure engaging 4 imps in an alley. The fight lasted 12 seconds. When it was over, he was already moving toward the next detection on his scanner. Tony stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the city. Jarvis has been analyzing his movement patterns. He's not sleeping. Not eating. Just hunting, killing, and moving to the next target. For 3 days straight. "That's not sustainable," Steve said, studying the tactical map. "Even with his enhancements, he has to rest eventually." "You'd think," Natasha interjected, entering with a tablet. "But his armor's biomonitors, the ones we can actually read, show no signs of fatigue. If anything, he's getting faster." More efficient. Because he's adapting, Bruce Banner said quietly from his corner of the room. The scientist had been studying footage of the figure's combat techniques, making notes. Every fight teaches him something about these demons. He's learning their patterns, their behaviors. Optimizing his tactics. Steve frowned. Bruce, you've been watching him. Eventually, they forget how to be anything else. Before Steve could respond, alarms blared. Agent Hill pulled up a new screen. Multiple contacts. This is bigger than the other breaches, we're reading at least 30 hostiles. Location, Harlem, near the Apollo Theater. Dispatch teams, Fury ordered. And someone. He's already there, Hill reported, tracking the figure's energy signature. Engaged and, wait, there are other signatures converging on that location. Multiple enhanced individuals. Who? Natasha demanded. Hill's face went pale. Luke Cage. Jessica Jones. Iron Fist. They're all moving toward the breach. And sir, they're not moving to assist. They're moving to intercept him. The streets of Harlem were chaos. The dimensional breach had opened in broad daylight, demons pouring into a neighborhood full of people. But unlike previous breaches, these demons seemed organized, moving with purpose, driving civilians toward specific locations. They're hurting people, Jessica Jones said, hovering above the street, her super strength allowing her to tear a street sign free to use as a weapon. Since when do demons use tactics? Since someone started teaching them, Luke Cage replied, his unbreakable skin absorbing a fireball without damage. He grabbed an imp and hurled it through a storefront window. We need to close that breach. Already working on it, Danny Rand, the immortal Iron Fist, said, his fist glowing with chi energy. But those protective symbols around the rift, they're not demonic. They're human magic. Someone on this side is keeping it open. Then they saw him. The figure rounded the corner at full sprint, weapons already firing. 3 demons died in as many seconds. He didn't slow down, didn't acknowledge the people fleeing around him, just carved through the horde with mechanical precision. That's him, Jessica said. The guy who's been all over the news. The Demon Slayer. He's heading straight for the breach, Danny observed. And Danny could only watch as he cleared the area around the breach, then pulled out his BFG 9000 and aimed at the rift itself. He's going to collapse it. Danny realized. Everyone get back. The blast tore through the dimensional fabric, destabilizing the breach. Reality snapped back into place, and the rift sealed with a sound like reality itself sighing in relief. The figure stood in the aftermath, surrounded by demon corpses and ash, breathing steadily, already checking his scanner for the next target. Luke approached slowly, hands visible. We're not enemies. But you can't operate in our city without rules. The figure looked at him with those tired, ancient eyes. Rules? His voice was quiet, but it carried. You have rules. 4. Demons. We have rules for heroes, Luke corrected. And right now, I'm not sure which one you are. The figure didn't answer. He just walked away, his scanner already beeping with new contacts. Jessica watched him go. He's going to be a problem. He already is, Danny agreed. The question is, what do we do about it? From a rooftop 3 blocks away, Frank Castle watched through binoculars. Beside him, a voice crackled through a radio. Assessment, Castle. He's efficient. Brutal. Doesn't compromise. Frank lowered the binoculars. He's everything the Avengers wish they could be but are too decent to become. Can he be recruited? Frank thought about that. Recruited? No. Aimed? Maybe. But whoever tries better be ready for the consequences. Noted. Continue observation. Frank clicked off the radio and watched the figure disappear into the city, already hunting the next breach. Behind him, hidden in shadow, 3 figures emerged, ninjas of the hand, their swords drawn. For 3 days. What's your assessment? Bruce removed his glasses and rubbed his eyes. Clinically, he's exhibiting behavior consistent with severe PTSD and obsessive-compulsive disorder. The repetitive hunting, the inability to stop, the lack of self-care, these are symptoms of someone trapped in a trauma response loop. He paused. But here's what's interesting, it's working. That psychological dysfunction makes him the perfect weapon against this specific threat. He's broken in exactly the right way, Natasha translated. I wouldn't phrase it like that, but, yes. Clint entered, still wearing his tactical gear from a breach response in Queens. Got another problem. Punisher made contact. Everyone turned to look at him. Frank Castle. Steve's voice was carefully neutral. What happened? Nothing violent. Yet. Clint pulled up footage on the main screen, grainy cell phone video from a bystander. It showed the figure clearing a breach in a warehouse district when another armed figure approached from the shadows. Frank Castle, wearing his signature skull vest, carrying enough weaponry to invade a small country. The 2 men faced each other for nearly a minute, neither speaking, neither moving. Then Castle nodded once, a gesture of recognition between professionals, and walked away. That's it? Tony asked. No fight? No territorial pissing match? Castle understands what he's looking at, Natasha said. He's fought his own war long enough to recognize someone fighting a bigger one. Agent Hill received a call, listened, then looked up sharply. We have a situation. Wolverine just arrived at Stark Tower. Says he needs to speak with the Avengers. Says it's about the Demon Killer. 5 minutes later, Logan stood in the command center, looking exactly as uncomfortable as he always did in corporate spaces. The feral mutant radiated barely contained violence, his hazel eyes scanning the room before settling on Steve. Where is he? Logan's voice was a growl. Who? Steve asked, though he knew. Don't play dumb, Rogers. The guy in green armor who's been tearing apart demons for 3 days. Where is he? Why do you want to know? Logan's claws extended with that distinctive snicked sound. Because I tried to stop him from killing what he thought was a demon. Turned out to be a mutant kid, transformation powers, horns, red skin, the whole package. Kid was terrified, running from a mob. Your friend had him targeted before I got there. The room went silent. Did he? Steve couldn't finish the question. Kill him? No. But only because I'm fast enough to get between them. He had his shotgun to my chest, finger on the trigger, when the kid's mom showed up screaming her son's name. Logan retracted his claws. That's when he stopped. Lowered his weapon, looked at the kid for 10 seconds like he was computing something, then walked away. He made a mistake, Bruce said quietly. Identified a non-hostile as a target. Yeah, and next time I might not be there. Logan's expression was hard. You need to get control of this guy before he kills an innocent person. We're trying, Steve said. But he doesn't exactly cooperate with authority. Then try harder. Because I'm not the only one who's noticed. Logan pulled out his phone and showed them photos, clandestine surveillance shots of the figure from multiple angles. These are being passed around. Hydra, Hand, AIM, even the goddamn friends of humanity. Everyone wants a piece of him. Either to recruit him, study him, or kill him. Let them try, Tony muttered. That's not the point, Stark. The point is you've got a weapon walking around your city, and you don't even know whose side he's really on. He's on the side of killing demons, Steve said firmly. That much is clear. Today. What about tomorrow? when the demons are gone and he's still got that arsenal and nowhere to point it? Logan shook his head. I've seen this before. People who make themselves into weapons. He holstered his weapons. Luke relaxed slightly. Good. Now we can. The figure's hand shot out, impossibly fast, and grabbed Luke by the vest. With strength that should have been impossible, he moved the unbreakable man aside, stepped past him, and drove his crucible blade through the possessed girl's heart before anyone could react. The corruption shrieked and dissipated. What was left collapsed, barely recognizable as human after the demonic energy had finished eating her from the inside. Jessica lunged at him, fury driving her fist toward his helmet. The figure caught her wrist mid-punch, twisted, and threw her into a parked car hard enough to dent the door. Luke charged, and the figure sidestepped, used Luke's momentum against him, and sent the unbreakable man crashing through a brick wall. Danny's fist glowed with the full power of the iron fist. You're making a mistake. The figure drew his shotgun and aimed it at Danny's chest. Not threatening. Not posturing. Just ready. Danny hesitated. He could see it in the figure's posture, his readiness. This wasn't someone who bluffed. If Danny attacked, the figure would kill him. Simple as that. Danny, don't, Luke said, pulling himself from the rubble. He's not worth it. She was 16, Jessica snarled, extracting herself from the car. You murdered a 16-year-old girl. The figure lowered his weapon and pointed at the corpse. At what the scanner had shown. At the truth they didn't want to accept. The girl had been gone long before he'd ended her suffering. Then he pointed at the breach, where more possessed humans were shambling through, their corruption so advanced they barely resembled people anymore. How many more are you willing to let suffer? That's not the point, Luke said, but his voice had lost its certainty. The figure turned away from them and resumed his work, eliminating demons with ruthless efficiency. Luke, Jessica. The master wants him alive, one hissed. His blood could open doorways to dimensions we've only dreamed. Frank's pistol fired 3 times. 3 bodies hit the rooftop. No one's getting his blood, Frank muttered, reloading. Not while I'm watching. But even he knew, he couldn't watch forever. And the vultures were circling.
5 days after the initial incursion, Mephisto made his move. The demon lord had been patient, watching, learning, understanding what he faced. The dimensional barriers were weakened, yes, but the armored warrior had proven far more effective than anticipated. 17 breaches, 17 failures. Time for a different approach. Time to make it personal. The call came to S.H.I.E.L.D. at 3:47 a.m. Agent Hill took it, listened for 30 seconds, and went pale. She found Fury in the command center, still awake after 72 consecutive hours. Sir, we have a problem. A big one. Fury turned from the displays tracking the figure's movements across the city. Bigger than demons invading New York? Yes. Hill pulled up security footage from a S.H.I.E.L.D. safe house in Queens, the one housing the city planner and his 7-year-old daughter. The timestamp was 17 minutes old. They're gone. The entire facility was hit by something that bypassed our security systems like they weren't even there. No alarms, no alerts, nothing until the next patrol shift found everyone unconscious and the targets missing. Missing or dead? Missing. Whoever took them wanted them alive. Hill pulled up additional footage, grainy, damaged, but clear enough. It showed figures in tactical gear moving with supernatural speed, their eyes glowing red. Enhanced individuals. But not any we have on file. Possessed, Fury realized. Mephisto's using humans as assets. It gets worse. Hill pulled up a note left at the scene, photographed by the forensics team. Written in what analysis confirmed was human blood. The Slayer knows where to find them. Come alone. Come armed. Let us see if your crusade has limits. An address in the Bronx followed. An abandoned church. It's a trap, Hill said unnecessarily. Of course it's a trap. Fury studied the image. The question is, does he know it's a trap and not care, or does he think he can win anyway? Sir, we need to inform the Avengers. Already on it.
Once our friend dead, Natasha finished. The figure checked his weapons one last time. Then he did something unexpected. He reached into a compartment on his armor and pulled out a small device, offering it to Tony. What's this? Tony asked, taking it carefully. The figure pointed at the device, then at his armor. Made a tapping gesture on his helmet. It's a tracker. Communication relay. Tony's eyes widened as Jarvis analyzed the device. It's both. And it's giving me access to his armor's sensor feed. He's letting us see what he sees. Why? Steve asked. The figure looked at him with those ancient, tired eyes. Then he pointed at Steve, at the team, at the civilians in the church. Made a protective gesture. In case I fail. So you know what you're facing. You're not going to fail, Steve said firmly. The figure's expression didn't change. He'd failed before. Probably many times. Failure was always a possibility. But that had never stopped him from trying. He turned toward the church and started walking. Wait, Bruce called out. If you're going to face Mephisto's avatar, you should know, demon lords operate on rules. They can't fully manifest without permission, without invitation. But they can manipulate, corrupt, tempt. Don't listen to anything he says. Don't make any deals. The figure paused, glanced back, and for the first time, something that might have been grim amusement flickered in his eyes. I don't negotiate with demons. Then he was moving, crossing the street with purposeful strides, shotgun in hand. The church doors opened for him, not mechanically, but as if the building itself welcomed him in. The protective wards flickered but didn't stop him. He'd been expected. Inside, the possessed humans turned to face him in perfect synchronization, their eyes glowing red. The demons emerged from shadows, circling, waiting. And at the altar, Mephisto's avatar smiled. Welcome, Seraphim's chosen, the demon lord's voice echoed through the church. The rift that had been opened inside. Waiting. Planning. The figure knew better than to rush in blindly. He'd fought demon lords before. They always had contingencies. So he waited. 3 minutes later, the Avengers arrived. Quinjet touching down silently 2 blocks away, team deploying with tactical precision. Steve approached first, shield on his arm, moving carefully. I know you can hear me, Steve called out. This is a trap. We need to plan. The figure raised one hand, cutting him off, then pointed at his scanner. He tapped the display 3 times, tick tick tick, then held up 7 fingers. 7 minutes until something happens. Until what? Natasha asked, materializing beside Steve with her usual stealth. The figure pointed at the church, then made a downward collapsing gesture. The building was rigged to collapse. Or explode. Or both. The civilians? Steve asked. The figure pointed at the basement, held up 2 fingers, then clutched his fist to his chest, alive but time's running out. Tony landed, his armor's sensors scanning the church. He's right. Jarvis is detecting structural weaknesses and what looks like demonic energy building in the foundation. If I had to guess, Mephisto's planning to collapse the whole thing on top of everyone inside. Then we get them out, Steve said. Fast and quiet. The figure shook his head. He pointed at the protective wards on the windows, then at Steve and the others. Made a blocking gesture. You can't enter. The wards prevent it. Magic wards? Bruce asked, arriving with the team. He'd been studying mystical theory since the first incursion. Designed to keep out, what, exactly? The figure pointed at his own chest, then at the Avengers, then shook his head. Pointed at the demons inside, then nodded. The wards keep out everyone except him and the demons. Anyone else who tries to enter will trigger the collapse. So you have to go in alone, Steve realized. That's what Mephisto wants. To separate you from any. The figure holstered his shotgun and drew the crucible blade. The golden-white energy ignited, and he drove it into the floor, not just cutting but disrupting the mystical energy of the wards themselves. Impossible. That blade shouldn't. The wards shattered. All of them. Simultaneously. He just broke the containment. Strange's voice crackled over the comm. The wards were holding the building together. It's going to collapse now. Avengers, move. Steve commanded. Get those civilians out. But the figure was already moving. He dropped through the hole he'd created, falling into the basement in a crouch, landing between the city planner and his terrified daughter. The girl screamed. Her father pulled her close, expecting death. The figure stood slowly and turned to face the basement door, where 3 demons were already descending, drawn by the ward's collapse. Above, the church began to groan. Timber cracked. Stone shifted. Mephisto's avatar laughed. A sound like breaking glass and dying stars. You've doomed them all, Slayer. Every possessed human in this building will die. Their blood is on your hands. The figure raised his plasma rifle and fired, eliminating the first demon as it entered the basement. Then the second. Then the third. He turned to the civilians, grabbed them both, gently, despite his urgency, and began scanning the basement walls with his device. Looking for weakness. A way out that didn't involve going back through the collapsing structure. The north wall. Tony's voice came through the device's speaker. It's thinnest there. 2 feet of brick and you're in the adjacent building's basement. The figure didn't question how they could help him now that the wards were down. He simply acted. He aimed the BFG 9000 at the north wall, his last shot, his final heavy weapon. Papa, what's happening? The little girl cried. Her father held her close. It's okay, baby. It's going to be. The figure fired. Making the walls shake. I've been waiting. Let us discuss the terms of your surrender. The figure raised his shotgun. Yes. I forgot. You don't talk much, do you? Very well. Let me explain how this works. Mephisto gestured, and in the air between them, images formed, the city planner's daughter, huddled in the basement, crying. Her father beside her, trying to comfort her despite his own terror. 2 lives. 2 innocent souls. All you have to do is lay down your weapons and surrender yourself to me. I'll release them. You have my word. The figure lowered his shotgun slightly. Everyone watching through the sensor feed tensed. Don't do it, Steve muttered. Don't trust him. Or, Mephisto continued, you can fight. Kill every possessed human in this church. Slaughter them all. And when you reach the basement to save your precious innocence, you'll find them already dead. Killed by the very violence you brought into this sacred place. The figure stood perfectly still. Tick-tock, Slayer. 5 minutes until the foundation collapses. What will it be? Your crusade? Or their lives? The possessed humans began moving, closing in slowly. Not attacking. Just surrounding him. Waiting for his choice. On the sensor feed, the Avengers watched the figure's hand tighten on his weapon. Watched his other hand move to his scanner. Watched him make a calculation that no one should have to make. He's not actually considering surrender, Tony said. Tell me he's not. The figure raised his shotgun and fired. But not at the possessed humans. Not at the demons. At the floor. The superheated slug punched through ancient wood and stone, drilling down into the basement below. He fired again. And again. Creating a hole, a path, a way through that bypassed Mephisto's trap entirely. Clever, Mephisto admitted. But insufficient. The wards extend through every level of this structure. You cannot. Potential help. The figure nodded once. Obviously. And you're going anyway. Another nod. Obviously. Steve studied him, this warrior who'd appeared from nowhere, who'd fought for 5 days without rest, who'd killed hundreds of demons without hesitation or mercy. Who was now about to walk into an obvious trap to save 2 people he'd never met. Why? Steve asked. You don't know them. You don't owe them anything. Why risk everything for 2 strangers? The figure was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was quieter than they'd ever heard it, rough with something that might have been old pain. Because someone has to. For words that carried the weight of eons. For words that explained everything about who he was and why he fought. Someone had to stand between the innocent and the darkness. Someone had to say no to hell itself. Someone had to make the hard choices and live with the consequences. And he'd decided long ago that someone was him. Then we help however we can, Steve decided. Tony, can you get eyes inside? Drones, remote sensors, anything. Already deploying. Micro-drones launched from Tony's armor, small enough to slip through cracks in the church's structure. Holographic displays appeared, showing the interior layout. 47 possessed humans throughout the main sanctuary. 12 demons in the choir loft and side chapels. Civilians in the basement as reported. And, oh, that's not good. The display zoomed in on the church's altar. A massive summoning circle had been carved into the floor, pulsing with dark energy. In its center stood a figure, humanoid but clearly not human, wrapped in robes that seemed to be made of shadow and flame. Mephisto's avatar, Dr. Strange said, arriving via portal. He looked exhausted, his astral form flickering. Not his true form, that's too powerful to manifest fully on Earth, but still incredibly dangerous. If he's here personally, even as an avatar, it means he really care and started to walk away. Wait, the city planner said, finding his voice. I helped them. I betrayed everyone. Why did you save us? The figure looked back one last time. Because someone has to. Then he was gone, disappearing into the city, his scanner already beeping with new contacts. Behind him, the Avengers stood in the wreckage, understanding a little more about the weapon that had chosen to fight alongside humanity. And far away, in a penthouse overlooking the city, several figures watched surveillance footage of the church's collapse. Impressive, one said. A woman with white hair and eyes that had seen too much. He's everything the reports claimed. More, another agreed. A man whose hands crackled with barely contained energy. AM wants him. Hydra wants him. Half the criminal underworld wants him. The question is, who gets him first? No one, said a third voice, cold and precise. He's not the type to be gotten. But he can be influenced. Directed toward targets we choose. The speaker stepped into the light, a man with an eye patch, but not Nick Fury. This I was wrong, ancient, hungry. The question is, how do we make him want what we want? Simple, the woman said, smiling. We give him more demons to kill. As many as he wants. All he has to do is ignore where they're really coming from. In the darkness between realities, Mephisto heard their plotting and smiled. Mortals were so predictable. so easily manipulated. The Slayer had won this round. But the war? The war was just beginning. The next morning, Nick Fury called an emergency meeting. Not just the Avengers, everyone. X-Men representatives. Defenders. Even Frank Castle, who showed up armed and looking like he'd rather be literally anywhere else. The holographic display at the center of Stark Tower's conference room showed a map of New York City covered in red dots, each one a dimensional breach over the past week. 73 in total. All closed. All handled by one person. Let's address the elephant in the room, Fury said, standing at the head of the table. We have an unknown enhanced individual operating in our city with zero oversight, zero accountability, and enough firepower to level a small country. We don't know his name, his origin, or his endgame. And before anyone says it, yes, he's been helpful. But helpful doesn't mean safe. He saved 2 civilians yesterday, Steve interjected. Walked into a trap specifically designed to kill him because it was the right thing to do. And killed 47 people in the process, Logan growled from his position by the window. Possessed or not, those were human beings. They were already dead, Bruce said quietly, pulling up medical analysis on the side screen. I've been studying the corruption process. Once demonic energy reaches 60% saturation in human tissue, the degradation is irreversible. The host's consciousness is gone. What remains is just meat being puppeteered. You're asking us to accept execution without trial, Matt Murdock, Daredevil, said from the shadows. The blind lawyer's voice was tight with barely controlled anger. To trust one man's judgment about who lives and dies. I'm not asking you to accept anything, Fury said. I'm stating facts. This individual has taken it upon himself to be judge, jury, and executioner. The question is, what do we do about it? We recruit him, Tony suggested. Make him an Avenger. Give him support, resources, a team to watch his back. You think he'd accept? Natasha asked. The figure studied the data for 3 seconds, then turned away. Not my problem. Not your, Tony's faceplate retracted, revealing his incredulous expression. You're kidding, right? You've spent a week protecting this city, and now you're saying human cultists building demon portals isn't your problem? Demons are my problem. Humans are yours. They're connected. Steve's voice rose with frustration. The humans are enabling the demons. If we stop the cultists, we stop the breaches. Then stop them. The figure started walking toward the nearest exit, toward Steve and the Avengers blocking it. Steve planted himself in the center of the tunnel. We're not done talking. I am. They stood 3 feet apart, 2 immovable wills facing each other in the darkness. I know you've been fighting alone for a long time, Steve said quietly. I know you've learned not to trust anyone, not to depend on anyone. But you're in our world now. Our city. These are our people. We're asking, not ordering, asking, for you to work with us. The figure was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried a weariness that made everyone present feel the weight of however many years he'd been fighting. I worked with people once. He paused. They died. All of them. Because I wasn't fast enough. Strong enough. Because I trusted them to survive while I fought. That wasn't your fault, Steve said. Doesn't matter. Whose fault? The figure's hands clenched. Dead. Is. Dead. I work. Alone. Now. No. One. Dies. But. Demons. No one dies but demons and possessed humans, Logan corrected from the shadows. And mutant kids you mistake for demons. And anyone else who happens to look wrong to you. The figure's helmet turned toward Logan. The boy lived. Because I stopped you. What happens next time when I'm not there? I learn. Better. The figure's voice held something that might have been shame. Scanner. Updated. Now. Detects. Human. Neural. Patterns. Won't. Mistake. Again. That's not the point, Logan started. That. Is. Exactly. The. Point. The figure cut him off. I made. Mistake. Fixed. It. Moved. On. That's. How. You. Survive. How. You. Win. By never stopping long enough to be human? Steve asked quietly. The figure's visor locked onto Steve. Being. Human. Is. Luxury. I don't. Have. Being. Human. Means. Hesitation. Doubt. Weakness. Demons. Don't. Hesitate. Can't. Afford. To. Either. Before anyone could respond, his scanner shrieked, loud, urgent, different from any alert they'd heard before. The figure pulled it out, studied the display, and his entire body language changed. Tension. Readiness. Something close to alarm. What is it? Natasha asked. The figure showed them the scanner. Multiple breach signatures, not small ones. Massive energy spikes all converging on one location, Times Square. That's right in the heart of the city, Bruce breathed. Middle of the day. Thousands of people. The figure was already running. Wait. Steve called. We need to evacuate, establish a perimeter. But the figure was gone, sprinting through the tunnel with inhuman speed, his weapons already being checked and readied. So much for coordination, Tony muttered. Avengers, move out, Steve commanded. Tony, get ahead of him, start evacuations. Natasha, coordinate with SHIELD and NYPD. Bruce. I know. Be ready in case we need the other guy. They mobilized with practiced efficiency, but even as they moved, everyone knew the truth. By the time they arrived, the figure would already be in the thick of it. Because that's what he did. That's all he knew how to do. Times Square at noon was a symphony of chaos, tourists, billboards, traffic, street performers, the beating heart of New York City. When the breach opened, it opened big. 20 feet across, hovering 30 feet above the street, and through it poured demons by the dozen. But not just demons. Enhanced humans, Mephisto's dealmakers, armed with weapons that glowed with hellish energy. They moved with purpose, establishing positions, creating a perimeter around the breach. This wasn't a random incursion. This was an invasion beachhead. The figure arrived as the first civilian started screaming. He took in the situation with a single glance, 40+ hostiles, hundreds of civilians in the kill zone, buildings full of people on all sides. Extraction impossible. Containment impossible. Only one option, kill everything that came through the breach before it could spread. He raised his plasma rifle and opened fire. The first enhanced human died before he even realized he was being targeted. The second managed to raise a Hellfire shield, it bought him 2 extra seconds. The third tried to run. None of it mattered. The figure moved through the chaos like a scythe through wheat, his weapons barking and roaring and humming with lethal precision. Demons fell. Enhanced humans fell. The breach kept pumping out reinforcements. Then he saw it, in the center of the breach, something was forming. Something massive. A shape that made the Hell Baron look like a toy, that radiated power even the figure's armor registered as dangerous. A greater demon. An officer in Hell's armies. A being that in his own universe required extensive preparation, heavy weapons, and perfect tactics to defeat. He was out of BFG ammunition. His armor shields were at 60%. He'd been fighting for a week straight. But none of that mattered because behind him, a group of schoolchildren on a field trip were huddled against a building, their teacher trying to shield them with her own body. The greater demon fully manifested, its horned head scraping against buildings on both sides of the square. It saw the figure, recognized what he was, and laughed, a sound that shattered windows and made reality itself shudder. Seraphim's chosen. Diminished. Weakened. Alone. The demon raised a massive. Skeptically. He barely acknowledges we exist. Then we contain him, Logan said. Put him somewhere he can't hurt anyone until we figure out what he is and where he came from. You volunteering to try? Frank Castle spoke for the first time, his voice flat. Every eye turned to him. Because I've been watching him for a week. I've seen what he can do. And I'm telling you straight, nobody in this room could contain him if he didn't want to be contained. Even you. Logan challenged. Frank met his gaze. Especially me. That's not a man anymore, Logan. That's what's left after you burn everything else away, pure purpose, pure will. You don't contain something like that. You aim it at the right targets and pray it never turns around. Poetic, Tony muttered. Also terrifying. Doctor Strange materialized in the center of the room, his astral form flickering with urgency. Forget recruitment. Forget containment. We have a bigger problem. Mephisto isn't retreating. He's escalating. My sources in the mystical community report that he's making deals across the city. Trading power for access points. He's building an army. Of what? Steve asked. Enhanced individuals. Desperate people. Anyone willing to make a deal with a devil for what they want most. Strange pulled up images, surveillance photos, mystical tracking data, intelligence reports. So far we've identified at least 30 people who've accepted Mephisto's offer. He's giving them powers, enhancements, weapons. In exchange, they're creating new breach points across the city. He's franchising the invasion, Bruce realized. Instead of one big rift, he's creating dozens of human-operated doorways that we can't predict or track. And our friend with the green armor? Fury asked. Is exactly what Mephisto wants him to be, so focused on demons that he's not seeing the bigger picture. The Demon Lord is using him as a blunt instrument, keeping him busy with small breaches while the real invasion infrastructure is being clawed hand, energy crackling around it. This realm will fall. And you will watch. The figure checked his remaining ammunition, low. Checked his armor integrity, compromised. Checked his medical supplies, empty. Checked the civilians behind him, terrified but alive. Did the math. And made his decision. He drew his crucible blade, the golden white energy igniting, and charged directly at something 3 times his size that could probably kill him in a single hit. Because someone had to. And he'd decided long ago that someone was him. The greater demon's claw came down like a falling building. The figure dodged left, the impact cratering the asphalt. He rolled, came up, slashed at the demon's leg, drew blood, drew a roar of pain. The demon's tail whipped around, caught him in the chest, sent him flying through a storefront window. The schoolchildren screamed. The figure pulled himself from the wreckage, armor sparking, shields depleted, and limped back toward the fight. Stubborn. Foolish. Admirably stupid. The greater demon readied for a killing blow. But ultimately irrelevant. Then Iron Man arrived, repulsors blazing, followed by Captain America, his shield ricocheting between targets. Natasha and Clint engaged the enhanced humans with lethal efficiency. Luke Cage planted himself between the demon and the civilians, unbreakable skin absorbing a blast of hellfire. And from a nearby rooftop, Frank Castle began putting high-caliber rounds into demon skulls with sniper precision. The figure stopped, turned, saw the Avengers deploying around him. Covering his flanks. Protecting the civilians. Fighting alongside him whether he wanted them to or not. Steve landed beside him, shield up. You don't have to do this alone. The figure looked at him for 3 seconds. Then at the greater demon. Then back at Steve. Stay. Back. Not a chance. Something that might have been respect flickered in the figure's eyes. Then. Keep. Up. And together, they charged the demon. The greater demon was a creature of pure malice and ancient power. Its skin was armored scales that had turned aside holy weapons for millennia. Its claws dripped with venom that could corrupt steel. Its roar could shatter minds. Against it stood a super soldier from the 1940s and a warrior who'd been killing demons since before Earth knew what demons were. The demon swung its massive fist. Steve's shield met it. The vibranium absorbing and redirecting the kinetic energy, but the sheer mass behind the blow sent Steve sliding backward 20 feet, boots carving trenches in the asphalt. The figure used the distraction. He activated his jump jets, launched himself at the demon's torso, crucible blade leading. The energy weapon punched through the armored scales, drew a shriek of genuine pain. He twisted the blade, pulled it free, dropped to the ground as the demon's backhand swept through the space he'd occupied. Tony's repulsors hammered the demon's head, drawing its attention. Jarvis, weak points. Analyzing, sir. The creature's anatomy is unlike anything in my database, but thermal imaging suggests concentration of energy in the chest cavity, possibly a core or heart equivalent. Great. So we just have to punch through 3 feet of demon armor to hit its heart. No problem. The greater demon's tail whipped around, faster than something that size should move. Tony dodged, but the enhanced humans, Mephisto's dealmakers, had regrouped. They opened fire with hellfire weapons, forcing Tony to divert his attention. On the ground, Natasha and Clint worked in perfect sync, eliminating enhanced humans with ruthless efficiency. But for every one they dropped, 2 more seemed to emerge from the breach. There are too many. Clint shouted, loosing 3 arrows in rapid succession, explosive tips that cleared a cluster of imps. We need to close that breach. Working on it. Doctor Strange materialized above the battle, his hands weaving complex mystical patterns. But the breach was different from the others, reinforced, stabilized by the greater demon's presence. This isn't like the anchor. The demon itself is holding the gateway open. Then we kill the demon. Luke Cage grabbed an enhanced human and hurled him into 3 others like a bowling ball. How hard can it be? The greater demon answered by slamming both fists into the ground. A shockwave of hellish energy radiated outward, sending everyone, heroes, demons, civilians, flying. Cars flipped. Buildings cracked. The street itself split open. The figure was thrown through a taxi, rolled, came up bleeding from a dozen places his armor hadn't protected. His shields were down completely. His left arm hung at an odd angle, dislocated or broken. But his right hand still gripped the crucible blade. Steve pulled himself from the rubble, shield somehow still intact. This isn't working. We need a new strategy. The figure spat blood, checked his scanner one-handed. The display showed the demon's energy signature, concentrated in its chest, yes, but also flowing through its limbs, its tail, maintaining the breach. Kill the demon, close the breach. But getting to its heart meant getting through all that. He looked at Steve. At Tony circling above. At the Avengers fighting impossible odds because it was the right thing to do. Made a decision. He grabbed Steve's arm with his good hand, pointed at his own chest, then at the demon's chest. Mind a throwing motion. Steve's eyes widened. You want me to throw you? At its heart. The figure nodded. That's suicide. You'll be exposed mid-air, no cover, no shields. The figure cut him off. Someone has to. Those words again. The mantra that defined everything he was. Steve looked at this broken, bleeding warrior who'd fought for a week without rest, who'd walked into traps and faced down demon lords, who'd chosen again and again to stand between the innocent and the darkness. Evacuated. All of them. You gave us time. You held the line. Steve smiled. Everyone's safe because of you. Something in the figure's body language relaxed. Mission accomplished. Innocence protected. That was all that mattered. Tony landed beside them, faceplate retracting. Jarvis is picking up weird readings from his armor. It's starting some kind of emergency repair protocol. I've never seen tech like this, it's literally rebuilding itself at the molecular level. Will he be okay? If his healing factor is as advanced as his armor? Yeah, probably. But he needs actual medical attention, not just. The figure's hand shot out, grabbed Tony's armored wrist with surprising strength. No. Hospitals. No. Containment. Nobody's containing you, Steve said firmly. But you're injured. Let us help. Help. By leaving me alone. Not happening, Natasha said, arriving with a shield medical kit. You just saved thousands of lives. Least we can do is patch you up. The figure tried to sit up, failed, slumped back. His armor's self-repair systems were working, but slowly. Too much damage. Too much sustained combat. Stubborn doesn't begin to cover it, Tony muttered. Doctor Strange descended, his astral form solidifying. He looked at the figure with an expression that mixed respect and concern. That demon you killed was a lieutenant in Mephisto's armies. By defeating it here, publicly, you've sent a message to every entity in hell, Earth is defended. Good, the figure rasped. But you've also made yourself a priority target. Mephisto won't stop now. He'll send everything he has to kill you, to break you, to prove that Earth can be taken. Let him try. Strange knelt beside him. Listen to me. I've seen your aura. I know what you are, or rather, what you were made to be. A weapon against the forces of hell. But even weapons break when used too hard for too long. You need rest. You need support. Need to fight. And you will, Steve interjected. But not alone. All right, Steve said. But we do it together. Before the figure could protest, Steve activated his calm, Avengers, I need a clear shot at the demon's chest. 10 seconds. Whatever it takes. On it. Tony dove at the greater demon's face, repulsors at maximum, drawing its attention. Hey, ugly. Let's see how you like a little human innovation. The demon swatted at him, but Tony was faster, weaving between its claws, keeping it focused upward. Natasha and Clint targeted the enhanced humans, driving them back from the demon's position. Luke Cage and Jessica Jones worked together, Jessica flying Luke directly into the demon's knee with enough force to buckle it. The greater demon staggered, roared, its chest temporarily exposed. Now. Steve shouted. The figure understood immediately. He sheathed his crucible blade, drew his plasma rifle one-handed, his left arm useless, and began firing at the demon's chest, precisely targeting the same spot, heating the scales, weakening them. Steve timed it perfectly. He grabbed the figure, used his super soldier strength and the figure's own momentum, and threw him like a javelin directly at the weakened point on the demon's chest. The figure flew through the air, 20 feet, 30, 40, impossibly exposed, every weapon in the square able to target him. An enhanced human raised a Hellfire rifle. Frank Castle put a bullet through his head from 600 yards away. An imp prepared to intercept. Clint's arrow took it through the eye socket. The figure hit the demon's chest with his full weight and momentum behind the crucible blade. The weakened scales gave way. The energy weapon punched through armor, through muscle, through whatever alien biology powered this thing. He felt the blade sink deep. Felt it touch something that pulsed with malevolent life. The greater demon's eyes widened. Actual surprise, actual fear. No. This isn't. Yeah, we got that, Tony said. But here's the thing, you're in our world now. Our city. And in New York. Nobody works alone. Not really. Even the loners have people watching out for them. Like Castle? The figure asked, surprising them all. You knew he was providing overwatch? Sniper. Positions. Changed. 3 times. During. Fight. Professional. Competent. From a nearby rooftop, Frank Castle heard everything through the comms he'd hacked into. He smiled grimly, packed up his rifle, and disappeared into the city. See? Steve said. People are looking out for you whether you want them to or not. You might as well accept it. The figure's helmet turned, looking at each of them in turn. Evaluating. Calculating. Making a decision. Fine. But I don't take orders. Wouldn't dream of it, Steve said, extending his hand. The figure looked at the offered hand for 5 seconds. Then, slowly, painfully, he reached up and clasped it. It wasn't trust. Not yet. But it was a beginning. 2 hours later, in a secure SHIELD medical facility, doctors examined the figure while he remained in full armor, refusing to remove even his helmet. His injuries were already healing, accelerated regeneration that their instruments could barely track. Remarkable, one doctor muttered. He should be dead 3 times over, but his body is repairing itself faster than we can document the damage. In an observation room, the Avengers watched through one-way glass. So what do we do with him? Clint asked. We can't just let him loose in the city. Why not? Steve countered. He's been loose for a week, and he's done nothing but protect people. He's also killed dozens of possessed humans without trial or due process, Matt Murdock said, having joined them after the battle. That's vigilantism at best, murder at worst. Those people were already dead, Bruce repeated. The possession process is fatal. He was ending their suffering. The figure activated the crucible's full power. Golden white energy erupted from the blade, flooding through the demon's body, disrupting its connection to hell, severing the mystical bindings that let it exist on earth. The demon's scream shook Times Square. Cracks spread through its body, light pouring from the fissures. It tried to grab the figure, to crush him before dying, but its strength was already fading. The figure held on, drove the blade deeper, until he felt the demon's heart. If that's what it was, rupture. The greater demon exploded into ash and hellfire. The shockwave threw the figure backward, his armor completely overloaded, systems failing. He hit the ground hard, rolled, and didn't get up. The breach wavered. Without the greater demon to sustain it, the dimensional tear began to collapse. Strange, now. Steve shouted. The Sorcerer Supreme's hands moved in a blur, mystical energy weaving a seal across the breach. Reality snapped back into place with a sound like thunder. The rift closed. Silence fell across Times Square. The remaining demons, cut off from hell, began to burn from the inside out. The enhanced humans, seeing their demon lord fall and their portal close, broke and ran. The Avengers let them go. They had other priorities. Steve found the figure lying in a crater, armor smoking, barely moving. His helmet was cracked, revealing glimpses of a face covered in blood. "Hey," Steve said gently, kneeling beside him. "Stay with me. Medical's on the way." The figure's hand moved weakly, reaching for his scanner. Checking for more breaches. Still trying to fight. "It's over," Steve said. "We won. The breach is closed." The figure's scanner showed 0 contacts. 0 threats. For the first time in a week, no demons to kill. His hand dropped, exhausted. "Rest," Steve said. "You've earned it." The figure's cracked visor turned toward him. When he spoke, his voice was barely audible, distorted through his damaged helmet. "How many civilians?" "Based on his judgment alone." "Yes," Steve said quietly. "Based on his judgment. And so far, his judgment has been sound. He's made one mistake, the mutant boy, and he immediately corrected it. That's more accountability than some official organizations show." "You're defending him," Matt said, surprise in his voice. "I'm acknowledging reality. He's here. He's powerful. He's dedicated to fighting demons. We can either work with him or fight him. And I'd rather have him on our side." Spoken like a soldier, Logan said from the corner. "But what happens when the demons are gone? What does he do then?" They all turned to look at the figure through the glass. He sat motionless on the medical bed, visor fixed on the door, waiting to be released so he could resume hunting. "I don't think the demons will ever be gone," Natasha said softly. "Not as long as Mephisto wants revenge. Which means he'll always have a purpose. Always have something to fight." "That's a grim way to live," Tony observed. "It's the only way he knows." In the medical room, the figure's scanner beeped quietly. He pulled it out, checked it, and stood immediately. Injuries or not, he was moving toward the door. "And there he goes," Clint said. "Another breach?" Steve checked the tactical feeds. "Small one. Brooklyn. SHIELD teams are already en route. He won't care. He'll get there first anyway." They watched the figure walk out of the medical facility, ignoring the doctor's protests, his armor still smoking from repairs. "Should we stop him?" Bruce asked. Steve thought about it, then shook his head. "No. Let him go. But keep monitoring him. If he needs backup, we'll be there. Even if he doesn't want it." The figure disappeared into the city, scanner in hand, weapons ready, searching for the next demon to kill. Behind him, unseen, unwanted, but undeniable, he had backup. Had people who'd fight alongside him whether he acknowledged it or not. And in hell, Mephisto watched through dimensional barriers and smiled. The weapon was perfect. The weapon was everything he'd hoped for. Now he just needed to break it. 1 week later, the pattern had become routine. Small breaches would open, 3-4 times a day. The figure would arrive within minutes. Demons would die. The breach would close. He'd move to the next location. The Avengers stopped trying to coordinate with him. They just orbited. Tony monitored from the air. Natasha gathered intelligence. Steve ensured evacuations happened smoothly. They'd become a support structure for a weapon that insisted it didn't need support. But Mephisto had been quiet. Too quiet. It's been 11 days since the Greater Demon, Agent Hill reported in the S.H.I.E.L.D. briefing room. No major incursions. No enhanced humans. Just small breaches with minimal demon presence. It's like Mephisto's, testing us. Or waiting for something. Waiting for him to make a mistake, Fury said, gesturing at the screen showing the figure clearing another breach in the Bronx. Waiting for him to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Or the right place at the right time. Strange's astral form materialized, looking more exhausted than anyone had ever seen him. I've been tracking mystical energy flows across the city. Mephisto hasn't stopped. He's just changed tactics. Instead of overwhelming force, he's using precision. Every small breach is depositing trace amounts of hellish energy into the city's infrastructure, power lines, water mains, subway tunnels. To what end? Steve asked. To corrupt the city itself. Turn New York into a hell-adjacent space where the dimensional barriers are permanently weakened. Then he won't need breaches. Hell will just bleed through. Permanently. The room went silent. How long until that happens? Fury demanded. At current rate? 3 days. Maybe 4. Can we stop it? Only one way. Find the main convergence point, the location where all that accumulated energy is flowing, and purge it. Completely. With enough force to burn out every trace of demonic corruption in the city's infrastructure. Energy pulse emitter. Designed to disrupt demonic energy at the molecular level without harming human tissue. Theoretical. Untested. Desperate. 30 seconds, Steve said, understanding. You've got it. Avengers. No. Mephisto roared, his form expanding, his power flooding the island. I will not be denied. The Demon Lord attacked with everything he had. Hellfire erupted from the ground. The possessed enhanced humans charged. The summoning circle pulsed with dark energy, trying to stabilize Mephisto's manifestation, make it permanent. And the Avengers met him head-on. Tony and War Machine, who'd arrived without fanfare, concentrated fire on Mephisto himself, keeping him occupied. Steve and Natasha engaged the enhanced humans, disabling rather than killing where possible. Luke and Jessica worked together to protect the figure, creating a physical barrier. Danny channeled his chi, disrupting the summoning circle's energy flow. And Doctor Strange dueled Mephisto on the mystical plane, two beings of immense power locked in battle that made reality itself shudder. The figure ran toward the possessed girl and her father, device in hand. They attacked, hellfire, enhanced strength, demonic speed. He dodged, parried, absorbed hits on his armor. Got close. Activated the device. Argent energy. The same power that fueled his suit, his weapons, his very existence, pulsed outward in a targeted wave. It hit the father first. His scream was inhuman as the demonic corruption was forcibly ejected from his body. He collapsed, unconscious but alive, human. The girl turned to run. The figure caught her, held her gently despite her thrashing, her hellfire burning his arms. He cranked the device to maximum and pressed it against her small back. I'm sorry. This will hurt. The pulse fired. The girl's scream was worse than anything he'd heard in a decade of fighting. Pure agony as the corruption was torn from her cells, her soul, leaving her violated and traumatized but alive, human. Welcome, he said as the figure arrived via speedboat commandeered from the Coast Guard. I've been waiting. We have so much to discuss. The figure didn't respond. Just checked his weapons, started advancing. No clever retort. No defiant declaration. Mephisto smiled. Yes. I forgot. You don't waste words. You just kill. It's rather refreshing, actually. So many heroes prattle on about justice and righteousness. You just act. The figure raised his plasma rifle. But before we begin our dance, Mephisto gestured, and the summoning circle flared with power. From it emerged figures, dozens of them. Enhanced humans, yes, but also demons. And in the front, standing with empty eyes and hollow expressions, were people the figure recognized. The city planner. The one who'd helped demons in exchange for his daughter's life. His daughter. The 7-year-old girl who'd asked if he was an angel. Both possessed now. Both corrupted. Both standing between him and Mephisto. Interesting dilemma, Mephisto purred. You saved them once. Gave them a second chance. And they wasted it. The father, desperate to protect his child, made another deal. Offered both their souls in exchange for power to defend her. I accepted, of course. And now. The girl took a step forward, her small hands crackling with hellfire. Her voice was wrong, too deep, too ancient, speaking words no child should know. Kill me, she said with Mephisto's inflection. Or let me kill innocence. Your choice, Slayer. The figure's weapon didn't waver. His scanner showed 94% corruption in both of them. Too far gone. No saving them. But his finger didn't tighten on the trigger. Mephisto said with satisfaction. There it is. The weakness I've been searching for. You can kill demons. You can kill strangers. But the innocents you saved. The ones you gave hope to. Those you hesitate for. The figure lowered his weapon slightly. That's the difference between a weapon and a person, Mephisto continued. Savable. He caught her as she collapsed, cradled her small body against his armored chest. Impossible. Mephisto's attention snapped to the figure. That technology doesn't exist in this realm. I made it exist. Then I'll destroy it. And you. Mephisto's full power focused on the figure. A blast of hellfire that could melt steel, corrupt souls, end civilizations. Steve threw his shield, disrupting the blast's path. Tony fired repulsors, drawing Mephisto's attention. Strange mystical shields absorbed what got through. And the figure, still holding the unconscious girl, stood in the center of it all, protected by people who decided his mission was worth dying for. You're not alone anymore, Steve said, standing between him and the demon lord. So stop acting like you are. The figure looked at Steve. At the Avengers fighting impossible odds. At the heroes bleeding and burning and refusing to retreat. At proof that humanity was worth saving. He gently laid the girl down, made sure she was breathing, then stood and faced Mephisto. He pulled out every remaining weapon he had. Plasma rifle. Super shotgun. Chainsaw. Crucible blade. You think your weapons can kill me? I am endless. I am eternal. I am. Annoying, the figure finished. Time. 2. Shut. Up. He charged, and this time, he wasn't alone. The Avengers moved with him, coordinated, synchronized, a team united against a common enemy. Tony and War Machine provided aerial bombardment. Steve and Luke engaged at close range, their unbreakable defense allowing the figure to strike at critical moments. Natasha and Clint targeted weak points, exploiting every opening. Danny's iron fist disrupted Mephisto's mystical defenses, letting strange spells strike true. And the figure did what he'd been made to do. He tore through Mephisto's manifestation with methodical brutality. The crucible blade carved through mystical defenses. The plasma rifle burned away corrupted flesh. The super shotgun. Circling. A weapon feels nothing. Acts without doubt. But you still remember what it means to care. And that makes you weak. He's not weak, Steve's voice rang out across the island. The Avengers had arrived, Quinjet hovering overhead, team deploying rapidly. Steve landed first, shield ready, flanked by Tony, Natasha, Clint. Luke Cage, Jessica Jones, and Danny Rand emerged from another aircraft. Even Logan had shown up, claws extended. And behind them, descending through mystical portals, came Doctor Strange with other magic users, allies from the mystical community, united against the Demon Lord. The cavalry, Mephisto said, unimpressed. How predictable. Tell me, Captain, do you think your mortal weapons can harm a Lord of Hell in his full manifestation? Don't need to harm you, Steve said, positioning himself beside the figure. Just need to stop you long enough for him to do what he does best. Mephisto laughed. And what's that? Rip and tear, Tony said, repulsors charging. Until it is done. The figure looked at Steve, then at the assembled heroes. People who'd followed him here, who'd put themselves between him and a demon lord, who were willing to die so he could complete his mission. He'd worked alone for so long. Trusted no one. Needed no one. But looking at them now, seeing their determination, their courage, their absolute refusal to abandon him. Something in his chest. Something he'd thought dead for decades, stirred. He raised his weapon again, but this time, when he looked at the possessed girl, his scanner showed something else. A secondary reading. The corruption was 94%, yes, but it was still spreading. Still converting. Which meant not dead. Yet, he said quietly. Then louder, to the Avengers, I need 30 seconds. What are you going to do? Steve asked. The figure pulled out a device from his armor. Something he'd been building from salvaged parts over the past week, something he hadn't been sure would work. An Argent. Tony pulled up a holographic map. Jarvis has been tracking energy anomalies. If we overlay strange mystical data with our sensors. The map lit up with lines of energy, all converging on one point. Oh, you've got to be kidding me. The convergence point was the Statue of Liberty. Of course it is, Natasha muttered. Iconic American symbol. Visible from everywhere. Maximum psychological impact. It's more than symbolism, Strange said grimly. Lady Liberty represents freedom, hope, refuge. If Mephisto corrupts that symbol, turns it into a doorway to hell, the mystical and psychological damage would ripple across the entire eastern seaboard. Maybe further. Then we stop him there, Steve said. Avengers assemble. Full force. We end this tonight. What about him? Clint asked, pulling up surveillance of the figure. Do we tell him? He already knows, Tony said, checking the figure's tracking data. His scanner picked up the energy spike 30 seconds ago. He's already heading toward the harbor. Then we better hurry, Steve grabbed his shield. Because I guarantee he's not waiting for backup. The Statue of Liberty stood illuminated against the night sky, her torch raised, her face serene. But at her base, reality was tearing itself apart. The corruption was visible now. Black veins spreading across the copper, hellish symbols burning themselves into the metal, the very structure groaning as it was transformed from monument to monstrosity. Around the statue, in the water, on Liberty Island itself, a massive summoning circle had been carved, not into stone, but into reality itself. And in the center of it all stood Mephisto. Not an avatar this time. Not a projection. The Demon Lord himself, manifested through weeks of accumulated corruption, stood 15 feet tall, his form shifting between human elegance and demonic horror. His eyes burned with malevolent intelligence. Doctor, occasionally glancing at the door as if hoping to see him. She wants to thank you, Natasha said, appearing beside him. They both do. The figure shook his head. No. Thanks. Necessary. You saved them twice. I'd say thanks are warranted. I also let them get taken, captured, used. If I'd been faster, then you'd have been faster next time. You adapted. You built a device that can save possessed humans. That's more than just killing demons, that's actually saving people. Natasha studied him. You're not just a weapon. You know that, right? The figure didn't answer for a long moment. Then, not sure. What else to be? How about a hero? Heroes talk, inspire, give hope. He gestured at himself. I just kill things. You kill the right things. That makes you a hero in my book. The girl saw him through the window. Her face lit up, and she waved, a small, innocent gesture that made something in his chest ache. He raised one hand, waved back. Just once. Then he turned and walked away. Because that's what he did. He fought. He saved. He moved on to the next threat. But now, when he walked away, he knew people were watching his back. Knew that if he fell, someone would be there to catch him. It was a strange feeling. Uncomfortable. Almost frightening. But not entirely unwelcome. In his new quarters in Stark Tower, grudgingly accepted after Steve had made it clear the offer wasn't optional, he found a note on the table. You're officially cleared to operate in New York. SHIELD won't interfere as long as you don't kill any more civilians. Also, Stark wants to upgrade your armor. Don't let him. He'll make it talk. Fury. Beneath it, another note in different handwriting. Training room is always open if you want to spar. Fair warning, I don't go easy. Steve. And another. If you ever want to talk, or not talk, or just sit in silence while someone patches you up properly, my door's open. Natasha. He looked at the notes for a long time. Then he carefully folded them and placed them in his armor storage compartment. Not because he planned to use them. But because, maybe someday he would. His scanner remained quiet. No breaches. No demons. For the first time since arriving in this universe, he had nothing to hunt. It was unsettling. But in the morning, he knew, there would be training with Steve. Tactical meetings with Fury. Tony trying to analyze his technology. The rhythms of a team he'd never asked to join but somehow had become part of. And when Mephisto returned, because he would return, the figure would be ready. But this time, he wouldn't be alone. That was new. That was acceptable. Maybe even good. Outside his window, New York City glittered with life, millions of people going about their lives, unaware of how close they'd come to damnation, unaware of the silent warrior who'd stood between them and hell. And that was fine. He didn't fight for recognition. Didn't fight for gratitude. He fought because someone had to. And now, finally, he wasn't the only one. The demon incursions never fully stopped. But they changed. Became manageable. Predictable. Because the Doom Slayer, as the media eventually named him, had established a pattern: appear, eliminate, vanish. Simple. Efficient. Effective. But he was no longer alone in that pattern. When breaches opened now, they were met with coordinated response. SHIELD evacuated civilians. The Avengers established perimeters. Strange provided mystical support. And the Slayer did what he did best. Ensured nothing from hell survived long enough to threaten innocence. Mephisto tried 3 more invasions over the following months. Each failed. Each taught the demon lord a harsh truth: Earth was defended not by one weapon, but by an entire world of heroes who refused to submit. The Slayer never fully integrated into the Avengers. Never attended press conferences or public events. Never spoke more than necessary. But he showed up when called. Fought alongside them when needed. And in his own silent way, became part of something larger than his endless crusade. Steve Rogers would later reflect that saving the Slayer wasn't about recruiting a weapon, it was about reminding a warrior that he was still human. Still capable of trust. Still deserving of the very thing he fought to protect: hope. And in the darkness between dimensions, Mephisto watched and plotted. The Slayer had found allies, yes. Had found purpose beyond mere violence. But everyone had a breaking point. Everyone could be corrupted. Everyone could fall. It was only a matter of time. Or so the demon lord believed. What Mephisto didn't understand, what he would never understand, was that the Doom Slayer had already been broken, corrupted, fallen, and remade into something that couldn't be broken again. He had died before. Lost everything before. Been betrayed, abandoned, and left for dead before. And every time, he had stood back up. Because that's what he did. That's what he would always do. Until every last demon was dead. Until hell itself burned. Until it was done. And in a universe of heroes and gods and cosmic entities, perhaps the most terrifying thing of all was this simple truth: the Doom Slayer never stopped. Never rested. Never surrendered. He was inevitable. And hell had learned to fear the sound of his footsteps. Live long and prosper. More stories await.